Well, thank you so much, everyone. How are you doing? Who is a creative human in this room today? Raise your hands. Woo! Give me a woo! Thank you for Creative Mornings Palm Beach, to the wonderful creator of First Female, Gabby, to all our sponsors, to Providencia, thank you so much. It's like perfect that I'm here because I am the great-granddaughter of a pastor. My great-uncle was the head of the Baptist Church in South Africa, and I was lucky enough to hear him really share a sense of community with the people that were there. And really, that is what creativity, I think, is all about once it gets out of you and into the public space. You're creating an engagement and a dialogue, whether you want to or not. You are having a deep impact on another human being. And that's been one of the great joys of my life as a creative. I always created from the inside out, meaning I always was considering the experience of my audience. And that is not the journey, of every artist and creative. But I am an only child, and I think I spent my entire life yearning connection with others in a very positive, beautiful way, becoming part of something bigger than myself. So today our theme is parallels. I think I'm doing this right. Oh! There I am. Okay, hello, looking all happy. Woo! Woo, woo, woo! So, basically, I love color. And I have loved color since I was a little girl. I was really blessed. My mother was an international journalist. We traveled around the world to all sorts of different cultures. I grew up in New York City. My first experience I remember of color was at my preschool, which was the United Nations preschool. And I had a wonderful Indian teacher, and she wore the most beautiful saris. And I think these color fields that you see as a young child have such an important impact on the brain and on your creativity, how you see the world. My mother loved gardens. And I remember, again, as a toddler, I used to think, people would say, where did the art start? It started on a beautiful summer morning. Gets me emotional. And I remember her placing the asparagus that we had grown in the garden on the kitchen and making my hand go across the asparagus with her. And she believed in my color. She believed in my art from when I was 5 years old. And so that's another really important part as a creative. And in all these parallel lives we live, is surround yourself with people who believe in you. Find your people that believe in you and walk hard away from the people that don't. Don't let them into your ethos, into your environment. Thank you. I have probably sold $1 million worth of art. And that is for you. That is not for me, actually. Where my money goes out of that art hopefully goes into the hands of the art handlers and the people and my community. I've probably given $100,000 back into the Palm Beach community with those sales. And when I started selling my art, it was at a time when only 13% of US museums had work by women in their permanent collection. Only 36% of galleries carried work by women. I was in Miami around some enormous collectors and in the gallery space, and it was suggested that I hide my name, as a woman. And luckily, I went to an all-girls school in New York, and this was just not going to happen. We're not letting that happen. And we are also, I love men. I love my father. I love the brute strength of men. I love watching crazy Star Trek violent adventures with my boyfriend. I love everything. I love the caring strength of men. But as a woman, I have to hold my own and our own. So this is why we're celebrating Women's Art Week, and celebrating the courage of women who came, before us. When we look at artists, and I'm naming artists you all know, so you have a personal reference like Georgia O'Keeffe. Okay, someone who took herself out into the desert to explore her soul, who decided that her paintings were her paintings, not for you to give your opinion on whether she was painting feminine lady parts or painting flowers. That was for her to decide, but her beauty she created was for you to enjoy forever, right? So, talking about the parallels, hilariously, this talk was going to be about being a human, being a creative human, and then artificial intelligence. And I have always loved technology, and I decided, I was having a nice good morning chat with ChatGPT 4.0, that how many of you have experienced ChatGPT? Okay, so great, we're all using it, having a blast. So I was like, okay, let's talk about some examples of parallels in art. And then ChatGPT was like, that is so cool. Do you want to collaborate? And I was like, oh my God, yes! I'm actually going to give a fully fledged talk with all the images, and ChatGPT is going to totally collaborate with me. So they're like, why don't you upload some videos and photos that you wanted to use? And I was like, yes, this is so exciting. So I'm uploading the video, and I've got all this going, and the slideshow, oh, it'll just be 15 minutes. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have an entire video photo slideshow with all examples of Mid-Journey and the new AI tools. I am so thrilled. Oh, could you just wait another 15 minutes? Wait, this is sounding awfully human. So I write, what's holding you up? And it's like, I'm just trying to upload the file and then download it into maybe WeTransfer or Google Drive or Dropbox. And it's like, can you just send me the talk? And they're like, nope, gotta upload it, WeTransfer, Google Box, but just I'll be done in 15 minutes. So now we're on hour 3, and I was like, wow, I've got to do another show opening, I've got a talk, I've got to go see my father, and now I should have just done my slideshow the old-fashioned way. So I was like, AI, and I was thinking to myself, how do I talk to this person that's not a person to understand the urgency I'm experiencing as a human about their lack of ability to deliver a PowerPoint? And I probably should have called someone at Palm Beach Atlantic to just help sort this out, who is an advanced young human who could help me. So basically, this is what we got. We got me, my art handler, and a laptop yesterday being like, oh, we need a PowerPoint now. So how do we as artists work in parallel with AI, and what does this mean for the future of creativity? I think in this instance, my humanity will overshadow the lack of creativity in this slide. So as you saw when I opened this talk, I got emotional. I think that's probably a good thing. That is the difference. As AI, artificial intelligence, develops, I think that as humans, we are going to have the wonderful, wonderful opportunity to work in parallel with artificial intelligence, and we are going to celebrate being human. So some of my paintings that people have enjoyed the most involve me just hours taking the physicality of my fingers across the canvas, and I set a very vibrant, energetic tone, but it's also just very healthy for me, just getting into this deep physical meditation of letting go of the world, turning off my phone, putting on some incredible music, and taking my physical person into a piece of canvas and beating that thing until it turns into something that moves me and hopefully moves someone else. So I say this because people right now seem to be so worried about AI and the value of art, and what will people do, and what will artists do? And I've thought about this a lot, and I thought this is actually really insulting to artists. Like, we're creatives. I mean, are you kidding me? We're going to create new paradigms. Have you seen the movies lately? What people who are creatives do with artificial intelligence and mastermind computer tools? But in saying that also, how insulting to the collector. I mean, I have the most wonderful collectors who collect ancient African art, you know, in pottery and all sorts of things. They are collecting the human experience. It's not like, isn't it wonderful that if a young person is like, that AI NFT style thing is so cool, I want that, that just expands our conversation. I don't believe that art is going away. I believe art in the traditional human format and the AI format can exist in parallel. And that we should look at how they can exist in parallel. How wonderful as artists today that we can use Instagram. I mean, I sold my first $10,000 painting on Instagram, sight unseen, to a Palm Beach collector in 2017, and it is the reason I moved to Palm Beach. What a blessing that technology gave me that opportunity. I mean, how absolutely incredible. Back in 2014, I had posted a picture I painted for my mother called Seeking Heaven. And it was on Facebook, and my mother had Alzheimer's. I gave a TED Talk about this a long time ago because it was the genesis of my art career. I had been an artist my whole life, but also a TV producer and a journalist, and I went through a time with my mother in the Alzheimer's home she was in towards the very end of her life, and we were having, I think she wasn't having trouble communicating, I was having trouble dealing with it. And I also knew I had such limited time with her, and I took a leave of absence from my work, and I went to England, and I sat in this beautiful garden with her and in her room, and I thought, what am I going to do with myself for all of these hours where I don't want to be away from her, but this is impossibly painful? And also, what were the things we loved? So you remember she was my Vegas champion. And I started, there was a painting in our church, which is just so wonderful that we're back in a church today. There's a church in England called Framlingham Church, absolutely beautiful, and very simple in some ways in its design. And at the front of the church was a beautiful painting with the title of the church in its initials, and it had a sense of heaven, just like you would see in St. Peter's in Rome, if you've seen the wonderful Sistine Chapel ceilings, and you see the air and the sky receding into a heaven-like structure, but this is face on. So you all look at the church, and you just look at the simple image of the sky. And it's a church that fits about 200 people in a beautiful, wonderful castle village in England. So I was so fascinated by this painting that I decided I would try and paint this for her, because the Alzheimer's brain keeps doubling down on itself, doubling down on itself, doubling down into, you know, one day I was her mother, one day I was her grandmother, one day I was myself, one day she was scared of me. And painting Seeking Heaven for her was this beautiful journey I could go on, knowing that I could provide some sensory visual peace for her, but it was also giving peace for me in the broad brushstrokes of painting this painting. So when I posted this on Facebook, I didn't tell the story. So this is so interesting, because I feel like what you create as a human being and the physicality of it, the message goes out. Like, you know, a lot of times art critics want the artist to be quiet, and that sounds insulting, but there's actually something interesting about that. Like you've done your human job, and now and then this work of art is going to start communicating to other people or other things. So all these people were like, oh, I just want peace for myself, right? And so I realized, wow, there's something here. I was still a journalist. I was not a full-time painter. And then the TED Talk happened, and then out of that TED Talk, I was given a studio at Mana Contemporary, which is a very respected art space with legends like Amy Sherald. I've practiced there and many other very famous artists. And so I was there in Jersey City, and then my paintings, which are full of color, started drawing interest in Florida. I was down in Florida for Easter, and a wonderful collector in Palm Beach said, I've just finished my home. I'm going to have 30 people to see Spray Avenue. Would you be able to get this painting to me by tomorrow, Good Friday? Back to the religious theme again. And I was like 7 hours away, and I didn't have a hanger. I didn't know anyone in Palm Beach who installed work, or certainly wasn't doing it on Easter weekend. So I said to my then boyfriend, who is very handy, guess what? You're an installer. If I sell the painting, which she saw on Instagram with technology that was originally from Facebook, I will buy you lunch at the Breakers Hotel in Palm Beach. And he was like, game on. So we arrive at this grand mansion, have this beautiful painting of sea grapes under the moonlight, where this sort of deep pearlization had come through, a silky pearl over the purple. Again, that I don't know how I did that, but it happened. And it arrives, and she had also just had the entire entryway hand painted by de Gournay. And so she's like, I'd like it here. And my boyfriend looks at me in his installer outfit, and he was like, I think it would be better placed there. And I'm looking at him, she's like, but I'd like it here. And he's like, excuse me. And he's like, Camilla, we can't hang it there. We're going to ruin the wallpaper. I was like, it'll be fine. He's like, no, it's not. That's why I'm here. So he's like, Madame, it should be here. And it's like, she's like, you're right. So he looks at me, so he tucks it up. Is it fantastic? Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Okay. Then she sort of looks at us like, I need you to leave. The guests are coming in an hour. So she hands us the check. We look at each other like, oh my God. Because he fully did not believe that I could sell a painting for $10,000 off Instagram to someone I didn't know in a grand home in Palm Beach. And off we scurry to the Breakers. Yes. And when I left that house, I looked at it one more time, and I said to myself, I'm going to move here. And that's exactly what I did. And a year later, I came with a friend. He used to create the sponsorships for Art Basel Miami at the very beginning, and she really knows the footprint of the art world in South Florida. And she's like, I like this idea. She's a real finance lady. She's like, I like this idea. Let's nail it. A studio, people, a home, a rental, a this, a that. And again, we did that all through technology and really good interpersonal relations, okay? So this is what I want us to think of as creatives as we move into this highly robotic space where we may not be driving our cars, we may not be cleaning our homes, our financials are almost already fully automated and processed anyway, is that make AI, as you step into this next phase of your life, your friend. Use environments like CreativeMornings and educational platforms to be courageous. It's courageous when you first pick up a paintbrush on a blank canvas and go, whew, and see, what happened. Come at it with the newness that you do with a new dance step or new work of art. Come at it as your friend. I mean, my friend let me down, my new friend. But we're still talking, you know. I still don't know the mystery of why for 24 hours this poor little robot tried to come up with a video and photo-driven, wonderful presentation for you, but it did. And that was really beautiful, actually, because I got to be a fully fledged human right here in front of you, instead of looking super flashy and great with this experience. I just got to be with all of you, and I think it made me sort of think about, like, sometimes we go to a yoga class or a dance class as adults, and we get back into our physicality and we feel so fantastic. The more that we go into this computerized artificial intelligence world, celebrate your physicality, celebrate your humanness, celebrate the beauty of touch and love. I started the brand Love from Palm Beach because I witnessed an enormous amount of pain in my personal life as a young child, and then in the world as a war correspondent. So I was in Iraq, in the Middle East, for the US invasion of Iraq. I was down at Ground Zero hours after the 9/11 attack, and I was honored to serve the American people in that role, always being at the front lines and being a calm voice of reason, to do a lot of strategic planning to tell the stories of humankind. And so what was interesting is in 2013, I could have continued on in my big jobs. I was an editor at the Wall Street Journal. My last job was as the Forbes anchor. I was being positioned to be a major television host at a big network, or vice president of a newspaper. And what was sort of interesting in my last hours as a full-time journalist was I was, at that time at Forbes, interviewing the most marvelous thought leaders of our century, Richard Branson and other great, amazing international men and women. And I noticed that when they looked at a piece of art, it really stopped them in their tracks. And because I was covering the billionaires list, I would look at what they would pay attention to over 3 days. And I would notice that culture and things created by humans really, really mattered to them. If you've ever had a moment in your career being a workaholic, which would be natural of this level of success, that can go out the window really, really quickly. But these very successful human beings had made culture and connectivity a third of their life. Great management skills for hundreds of thousands of employees. And then it was like, what's going on with this museum? What's going on with my daughter's art project? It really was important. And so I decided, instead of telling stories of broken civilizations, I wanted to reconnect people with their humanity through my paintings, and maybe create this sense of connectivity, in the parallel. I also want to say, in this moment in time, I referred that I'd had a very, painful part of my life. One of the things I find just as a civilization is that there seems to be a lot of times in the media that we're consuming separateness. Separate, you look different. I mean, I am like the poster board for a girl that's blonde, Christian, and full of privilege. But if you knew my story and you had any sense of humanity, when I was 13, I grew up with great privilege and great love, and I was much loved. But our house was blown up in a gas leak, and my mother ended up in the hospital, and my dad was on a business trip. And all of the numbers to reach my dad, and I'm an only child. And I was an only child living in basically a foreign city for my mother. That was the hardest thing that ever happened in my life, but it was the greatest gift, the great equalizer for me, to understand when you didn't know where you were going to eat, where you were going to go, who you could trust. I was 13 years old. The only thing I could do was I bought myself to school in my burnt clothing, and I continued on. And the school, in a few days, twigged that something was very wrong. Good things happened, people helped out, but it was years. Obviously, we lost everything in our home. I lost my mother for a long time. She eventually recovered. She had second-degree burns all throughout her body, being in that explosion. And it was so painful, but it also made me see the world through a completely different lens, made me really try and look at everyone around me and understand them more deeply. It certainly made me a much more generous person. Like when someone says they're hungry, they're hungry. Stop negotiating whether you think they're hungry. Should I give them $5 or $7? Just ask them what they'd like to eat, go buy them some food, be a good human. This is not confusing. I invite you, as we explore the parallel, to put aside your perception of what someone might be like, what they might think like. I went to the UN school, so I was the only white person in my class. I probably have a very different experience of community and culture than many Americans. My godmother was from Hong Kong, and she did a lot of the raising of me while my mother wasn't well. I'm blessed to have that lens of experience, but I also invite all of you to step into that you are living more similar but diverse parallel lives, that you have something to serve each other with your creativity, and to embrace that too. We are at Creative Mornings, to take that moment to say, or the courage to say, wow, they're a really great graphic designer. Maybe I could do a trade. Maybe I could trade graphic design for my editorial capability. Maybe my sense of fashion could help make that painter a better painter. Maybe we could have coffee about that. So I want to thank you all so much for having me today. I hope I inspired you. Fill your life with color. And see you again soon.